All right, let's talk about one of the most powerful and honestly most confusing tools in your camera bag, the lens. We're going to cut through all the jargon and give you a simple visual guide that is seriously going to change the way you shoot.
You ever watch a film and one shot just feels huge, right? Like a landscape that just stretches on forever. And then the very next shot feels super close, super personal, like it pulls you right into the character's world. Well, that feeling, that huge difference, it all comes down to the lens.
Okay, so let's just bust the #1 myth about lenses right now, because this is so important. A lot of us think the lens itself is what changes the perspective, but that's not it. Here's the secret. Perspective is all about your distance from the subject. The lens, the focal length, just forces you to move closer or farther away to frame your shot.
So to really get a handle on this, we've got to break down these two key ideas you see here, focal length and perspective. Let's start with what the heck focal length even is. First step, focal length. It sounds super technical, but I promise it's pretty simple. It's just a number in millimeters that tells you how wide or how zoomed in your shot is going to look. All you have to remember is this. A small number, like 16 millimeters, gives you a super wide view. A big number, like 200 millimeters, zooms you way, way in.
So let's translate those numbers into what they actually feel like. Down at 10 to 20 millimeters, you're in ultra-wide land, perfect for those huge, epic scenes. Then you move into 35 to 50 millimeters, and that's your natural zone, which is really close to how our own eyes see the world. And once you get past 85 millimeters, you're in telephoto territory, which is all about bringing things that are far away right up close.
All right, let's kick off our journey at the widest end of the pool, from about 10 to 35 millimeters. This is your go-to when you absolutely need to capture a massive scene, or, let's be real, when you're stuck filming in a tiny room.
So what is a wide-angle lens actually doing to your shot? Well, it pushes the background way, way back, making everything feel enormous. It's awesome for getting an entire room in one shot, but here's the catch. It can stretch things out near the edges of the frame, giving you this kind of exaggerated, larger-than-life feel. So when would you actually use one? Well, think about vlogging. A 16mm lens lets you get yourself and your surroundings in the shot. For real estate, a 14 meg makes rooms look huge and inviting. It's really the essential tool for those big, sweeping, establishing shots that set the scene.
Okay, next up, let's move into the middle of the range, the natural perspective, somewhere between 35 and 50 millimeters. You'll hear these called standard or normal lenses, and believe me, there's a really good reason for that.
They're called normal because they pretty much see the world the same way our eyes do, and that means you get very little distortion, which makes them crazy versatile. The 50mm lens in particular is so loved for its quality and price that it has this famous nickname, the Nifty 50. It's a legend for a reason and a staple in almost every creator's bag.
So where do these lenses really shine? Well, a 35mm is fantastic for things like YouTube interviews or documentaries because it just feels so honest and real. A 50mm, on the other hand, is a workhorse for product videos. Really, this whole range is the sweet spot for just good all-around storytelling.
And now we get to the magic. We're jumping to the far end of the spectrum, the telephoto lens. We're talking 85mm all the way up to 200 and beyond. This is where you can isolate your subject and create this incredible effect called compression.
Okay, this whole lens compression thing sounds way more complicated than it is. Just imagine this. Your subject is standing in front of a mountain way off in the distance. To get the shot, you have to stand way far back and zoom way in with the telephoto lens. And what happens is like magic. That mountain in the background suddenly gets pulled forward and looks huge like it's right behind your subject. And that is what creates that super dramatic cinematic look.
And that compression effect, it's basically a creative superpower. It's the secret behind those incredible cinematic portraits with that beautiful blurry background. You know, the effect called bokeh. An 85mm or a 135mm lens is a portrait shooter's dream. And of course, telephoto lenses are a must-have for sports or wildlife, anytime you just physically can't get any closer.
Okay, so we've gone through the what and the why. Now let's make this super practical. It's time to build your toolkit and figure out how to choose the right lens for whatever you're shooting.
So one of the biggest decisions you'll have to make is prime versus zoom. A prime lens has just one fixed focal length, like a 50mm. They're usually sharper, they're better in low light, and they tend to give you that classic cinematic look. A zoom lens, on the other hand, is all about flexibility. If you're in a situation where you have to adapt and move quickly, a zoom is going to be your best friend.
And that brings us right here to the ultimate takeaway, your very own lens cheat sheet. If you're shooting a talking head for YouTube, a 24 or 35mm is perfect. Doing a product video, go for a 50mm. A real estate tour, you're going to need that ultra-wide 14 or 16mm. And for that dreamy, cinematic portrait, the 85mm is your answer, hands down.
You know, if you remember only one thing from all of this, let it be this. It's so simple, but so powerful. A wide lens shows the environment. It tells the story of where someone is. A telephoto lens isolates the subject. It tells the story of who they are. It really is that simple.
At the end of the day, picking a lens isn't just a technical choice. It's your first creative decision. You're setting the mood, the emotion, and the focus of your story before you even press the record button. So the only question left is, what story do you want to tell?